The Dallas Cowboys drafted not one, but two defensive tackles in the 2025 NFL draft. Will either of them see the field this year? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're taking a look at the two defensive tackles that the Cowboys selected in the 2025 NFL Draft and how they fit into the depth chart. Landon, let's start with the first of their two selections. Jay Toia from UCLA, a big space-eating nose tackle. What did you see from him on film?
Well, first of all, let's just talk about the fact that it's really been a long time since the Cowboys drafted one of these like 340-pound plus nose tackles. I mean, Mozzie Smith was, even when he got drafted, probably in the range of maybe 330 or 325, and then he immediately just dropped that weight for reasons that still confound the mind. But I think that, you know, just getting the Cowboys to draft a guy like this finally it felt like a real win, right? And then watching him even more so, he just feels like this is the kind of guy you can get when you actually invest even a 7th round pick on a guy, right? This is a guy who you see at UCLA taking on double teams. You know, he's a strong run player. He's a disruptor. He's very difficult to move. He you know, sometimes you see some of these guys, not looking at you, Delone Walker, that are 335-pound plus guys that are getting moved all the time, or that play really high and that can't kind of unlock all that ability to anchor down and play the run the way you want. You don't really have that issue with this guy. I mean, there are certainly times when technique can get a little bit sloppy and he can get moved off the spot a little bit, but for the most part, he locks in, he comes off the ball quickly. I think you saw an uptick in his ability to kind of produce or at least be helpful as a pass rusher as well. I don't know that he's, you know, going to get very much opportunity as that as a rookie, but I think that there is the opportunity for that maybe in the future. All in all, I think the Cowboys really kind of, I mean, just for where he was drafted, got a real steal of a guy who I think can come in and potentially give you solid snaps on early downs, hopefully right away, because he has the size and already built in the strength. And then kind of develop into maybe with the track to hopefully develop into maybe a little bit more a guy that you don't have to take off the field on 2nd or 3rd down when you feel like there's passing situations.
Yes, just a couple of background things on him. First of all, his older brother is Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle who came out of Baylor 3 years ago, 3rd round pick by the Browns.
Yeah.
Now the difference between Siaki Ika, if you remember him, he was a 350-pound defensive tackle, but he was really tall. He was like 6'5", 6'6". Yeah. This guy is 6'2", and there's just a lot more natural leverage when you're 6'2", 340 pounds. And I know the Cowboys selected him at pick 217, and generally when you draft any player in the 200s, the odds of them making the roster are pretty low. However, this was somebody that a lot of people liked. And we mentioned Dane Brugler all the time on this podcast. Dane Brugler had him as his 116th overall player in this class. He had a 3rd, 4th round grade on him. So this is a guy that, at least in Dane's mind, very easily could have snuck into the top 100 picks. He falls all the way down to 217. I think this is a more talented player than you usually get in that range. 2 other quick notes. He's only 21, so he's incredibly young.
Very young.
Shocker, who's also a team captain over at UCLA.
Yeah, it's a real surprise there. I think the thing that we kind of have to examine sometimes, and I think this applies a little bit to Blue as well, is that, you know, some of these players are being pushed down because of positional value, in the same way that some players get pushed up because of positional value, right? Jay is like a nose tackle, right? Like you're not drafting him. He may have some potential upside as some pass rusher, but you're certainly not drafting him for any kind of pass rushing, upside or technique there. That's just like a bonus that you hope to achieve someday.
Yeah.
This guy does one thing and only one thing, but he does it really well. So if you're looking for that, getting him in the 7th round, it's not the same as, like, let's say drafting a wide receiver in the 7th round or a cornerback in the 7th round. He still has a higher rate of success simply because the value of this player or the quality of this player at the job that you're asking him to do is much higher than it probably would be for an equivalent position at one of those kind of skill positions. So this is a guy that I think, with his strength and his his ability currently right now as it stands, can come in and I think give you snaps, even though he's a 7th rounder. Now, how many snaps and is he rosterable and all that, that's to be determined. But I do think that this is a guy that, much more so than a lot of other 7th rounders that you see, because of the positional value and the circumstances around this guy, has a better chance to not only make the team, but also actually see the field this year.
Now, we've seen some of these guys, go on day 3 in the last couple of years. The most famous one was probably Tyler Shelvin, who played at LSU. I think he was a 4th-round pick by the Bengals. He just wasn't athletic enough to play in the NFL. Like, he had the strength, but it was just, there was no movement there. I see, at least on Toya's tape, he tries, and you see the effort. He's not a good athlete. Let's just be clear.
No.
He's not.
He's 340 pounds and he's squatty, there's a reason.
But if you have that guy and they play hard, you can kind of make up for some of the athletic deficiencies. That's something that Tyler Shelvin just never had. Tyler Shelvin he was a bad athlete that didn't play hard, but he was really strong. I think this guy's got a better chance to stick around in the league as a rotational nose tackle that comes in short yardage, goal line, and then maybe backup nose tackle.
I mean, I think what you see with a lot of these, like, 35-year-old, nose tackles that are 350-pound plus, is that they're just so big and strong that they don't move. They don't get moved a lot. I think the difference between what you're getting with this guy is that, he's not a great athlete, but he's going to fight through double teams. Like, he's going to actually, counter with his hands. He's going to reposition. He's going to, potentially try, every once in a while beat double teams, get through them, and I think at the very least, he's going to be a wide-bodied defender in the middle of your defense that's going to be able to keep your guys clean in a way that, and the problem is that you need those guys to be able to move enough to get into the right position to counter the schemes that are happening against you. And I think that that's what he has. He has the requisite athleticism to jump over a gap, get into his position, drop his anchor, and be ready to take on multiple blockers so that he can keep the linebackers clean.
Yeah, I think of another example real quick. The Ravens signed a defensive tackle this week, John Jenkins, who has bounced around the NFL for a while. I think John Jenkins turns 36 here in July. He started a combined 30 games in the first 11 years of his career because he's just been a situational backup nose tackle that's 350-ish pounds at 6'3", and he just can get on the field and you can't move him. And that guy has value even if it's in a limited role.
Yeah, which I think the thing you're looking for the scaling of the pricing for these guys is how are their feet? The older guys that you can get for nothing off the street, their feet don't move very well. They just plant and they're big, wide bodies. This guy's feet can move. Like, he's still an athlete out there. He's not a great athlete, but for 340 pounds, he can do what you need him to do to get to the positions to be that kind of roadblock in your defense, but an actual movable roadblock that you can get to where you need to kind of seal things off and let your linebackers run free.
Now, do you think he's a better prospect, real quick, before we move on, than Justin Rogers, the defensive tackle they selected last year from Auburn?
I do. I think he's a little bit better athlete.
I think so.
I think Rogers, had a lot more skin underneath, skins, a lot more experience coming from the SEC and playing a lot of snaps. So I still have a lot of hope for Rogers as well, but I think Toya has a little bit of a higher upside there.
All right, let's talk about the second defensive tackle that the Cowboys selected in the 2025 NFL draft, a name that's going to take you years to figure out how to pronounce it. We will get to Tommy next. This episode is brought to you by Skylight. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, meetings, whatever you got going on, all in one easy to see place. My life has been incredibly busy over the last couple of weeks with my daughter playing t-ball. We've got some board meetings that I'm on, church events, just a ton of stuff going on. But thanks to Skylight Calendar, it's made it easy to know what I've got scheduled for every single day. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are discussing the 2 defensive tackles that the Cowboys selected in the 2025 NFL draft. And let's get to their other 7th round pick, Landon. I'm going to try to make sure we've been practicing.
Let's hear it.
Tommy Akingbesote.
Good job. I think that's it. Yeah, Akingbesote. Olatunbosun is his first name.
Yeah,
Akingbesote. Tommy. Yeah, Tommy Akingbesote.
So there you go. That's the last time I'm going to be pronouncing Akingbesote for the rest of the podcast.
You just did it twice. That's great.
I know. All right. So this is a better athlete than from Jay Toia. But how far is he away from his best football?
Yeah, he's a different kind of player. You know, I mean, I view Akingbesote a little bit closer to more of a 3 technique. I mean,
I think he's a 3. Yeah,
he's like 6'3.5", like 306. I bet he probably played closer to like 310. And if you look at him, and I think we talked about this before, is that I like to play this kind of game with myself every time I watch one of these guys, and I go to search them out to see if I can figure out whether or not he which player on the defense or whatever tape I'm watching, if he's going to be this prospect. Yeah, and obviously I wasn't going to watch Akingbesote because I mean he's a draftable free agent grade on the Dane's board, but I was going to watch his teammate, and now his name is escaping me. The other defensive tackle was like a draftable guy, but he was more of the nose tackle, and Akingbesote played more of the kind of the 3 technique. And at first, I thought that it was Akingbesote that I was kind of sent to watch, and he was the more draftable grade guy, just because this guy kind of flashed a little bit, and he didn't test necessarily very well. His combine stuff isn't like, great combine numbers, even kind of accounting for his, under tackle position versus nose tackle. And that's why you've got him, in the 7th round. But I think he has a lot of the kind of building blocks that you want, right? He's got good height. He's got nice length to him. He's got some pop to his hands. He has some strength. He knows how to use that leverage, and he knows how to kind of play with his hands really well. He was he's a 4-star recruit coming out of high school from Maryland, so he stayed local. And he had some other offers, including at Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. So a guy that, was highly recruited, isn't necessarily a jump out of the gym type of athlete, which is normally what you see in those kind of highly drafted 3 technique.
No, but he is long, and I think he's incredible. I got the wingspan right here, 82 and 5/8 inch wingspan. I mean, he's got 33.5-inch arms. He's just a long player, and it shows up on tape.
He had 33.5-inch arms at the combine, where it was notoriously short where they were measuring. Nope. So, I mean, keep that in mind. Yeah. And so I think what you see from this guy is, maybe this isn't a guy that you feel like is going to develop into a starter for you necessarily, or maybe down the road that could be the case. But I think what you do think is that if I could put maybe 5-10 pounds of muscle on this guy, see if I can improve his explosives just a little bit, man, he could be a really nice swing interior guy. And again, having a guy like this potentially on your roster, I don't know if he's going to make the team necessarily this year. We'll see. But having a guy like this on your roster, just like when there's injuries, it's just another, guy who can actually probably play the run in a defense that is strong, can play with some leverage, just another healthy body who you could throw at the defense if you just need someone to play with strength in the middle and not just kind of get pushed around. I feel like that's what this guy can be, is just a really useful down roster rotational defensive tackle.
I was talking to Chad Ryder over at NFL.com about Tommy, because he studied him a lot this year. He actually thinks his best spot is like as a 5 technique, or if you just want to have him as a base end. And I kind of see that. Like, I don't know if he's extremely quick off the ball, but he's got this long frame where I think he could just beat up on offensive tackles. And we were just kind of talking about this guy. And the comp that we actually had is former Dallas Cowboy great, not really, Jihad Ward, who, remember, was a 2nd-round pick by the Raiders. He got traded to Dallas for Ryan Switzer in one of the most inconsequential trades of all time. Jihad Ward bounced around the league for years. Yeah. And then he lands with the Vikings last year, and he's a pretty good player. So that was back in 2017 that he got traded. And he's still in the NFL now in 2024, 2025, because he's just one of these guys that's long and strong and decent athlete. He's going to need some time. Like, he's going to need to be on a practice squad.
Oh yeah.
Probably for multiple years. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody 2, 3, 4 years from now ends up becoming a rotational defensive end, defensive tackle.
I really like that comparison, because I think a lot like Jihad Ward, Ward was a guy who didn't test very well. His numbers don't look very great, but when you watched him, you never thought that he wasn't athletic. No. Like you never felt like his game was lacking in athleticism. And I think that that's the case here too, is that, you feel like he's not, his numbers are not necessarily explosive, but when you watch him, he functions as an under tackle. He has no problem kind of, sometimes being the first person off the ball, getting into the gap really quickly and putting the blocking scheme kind of in advantageous positions, and so and spots where the guards are having to recover, and having to kind of, make up ground because he's just put them into a bad position because he's, got off the ball so well. So yeah, I do think that there's something here. I don't know if this is a guy that's going to be on the field for you this year, unless, there's a lot of injuries, but I like your idea. Yeah. Practice squad, maybe if he flashes in training camp, he is like your 53rd man, or he's a practice squad guy who gets brought up a lot, during the season, gets called up a lot.
That's the best case scenario. He's somebody that I expect to play a ton of snaps in the preseason. Like when we get to the 3rd and 4th quarter of these preseason games, he's going to be out there a lot because he needs to play. Yeah. I still think it's more likely than not he's going to be on a practice squad for multiple years. But he's a good athlete. He's not a good testing athlete, but he's a good athlete for his size. I won't be surprised if he makes it eventually.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I think a guy probably plays a lot of years of football because, he's just, you get him into a camp and he's a football player, like he didn't test as well as he plays on the field. And even if he is an elite athlete, he's a snap eater, a guy that if you need to eventually can just come in and play a whole bunch of snaps because you need several different 300-pound bodies to play in the middle of your defensive front during a season. And so he can just be one of those guys who comes in and maybe isn't the reason that you get beat, or is like a strong 11th man on your defense whenever he gets on the field.
All right, let's talk about the rest of the defensive tackle depth chart for the Cowboys and how these two rookies might fit in. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and the news never stops. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, later, let's talk about the Cowboys depth chart at defensive tackle. Yeah. Oso Digizua. They don't give us easy names to pronounce, but we got that one. It's only taking us 5
got that one down. Yeah.
Mozzie Smith. You have Solomon Thomas behind those. It's the only veteran really on the roster who's really more of a 3 technique than anything, an up the field guy. And then it's these two rookies. So I would assume the Cowboys are going to sign a veteran at some point, whether it's a Linval Joseph or a Linval Joseph type. They're going to have to bring in somebody, but there is opportunities and spots open for these two rookies to grab playing time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I expect they're going to give Toya plenty of runway to come in here and be a rotational piece on this interior defensive line. I mean, they drafted him. I think that they really liked him. I mean, again, I do think that, like we mentioned, they and a lot of other folks, I feel like, probably feel like they got a steal in the 7th round to get him that late. So, like I said, a lot of other people had him 3 or 4 rounds above that. And I think that kind of grading that you see indicates somebody that you have expectations that they can come in and give you snaps potentially in the NFL right away. So, at least make moves, and especially in a situation with the Cowboys where there's not a ton in his way. So if he comes in here and shows even a little bit of positivity, they're going to nurture that and going to give him plenty of opportunity to continue. I do agree that it does. You look at the grouping, and specifically, I feel like what they've done is they've taken care of the most difficult aspect of procurement for the defensive tackle position as they could, right? The pass rushers, right? Like they pay the big money to Osa to make sure he comes back. They go and get Solomon Thomas, who I do think is probably an upgrade as a pass rusher on Golston, as a 3 technique. I like Golston overall as a player, maybe a little bit better. But I think as far as an interior pass rusher goes, I think maybe Thomas is a little bit better. And so I think that those two guys alone, and then, you can combined with all the other defensive ends that you have that you can potentially reduce down, you at least solve the pass rush aspect of this. Now the run stopping stuff, I mean, that's why I think we talked about, that's the same reason that you could draft a guy in the 7th round that you feel pretty good about playing in the regular season. You can also get a guy off the street at almost any point, during the offseason or regular season that could come in and play solid nose tackle snaps for you if you need them to. So I think that the scenario that you're probably looking at right now is Linval Joseph, or name your nose tackle that's on the street, whoever, is the healthy floor for this situation, right? They know at any point when it comes down to it, with a week left to go in training camp, that they can go get some big hog molly, put him right down there, put an NT on his name, and he can go play, and keep guys clean off in the middle of the field. But if they want to see what they've got in these young guys, and I also think that there's the opportunity to kind of let the roster building situation play out a little bit more, see if some of these guys get cut, especially as teams brought in their rookies, and see if there's maybe an even upgrading of the market from where we are right now in the next few months as the training camp goes on. So I do think that there's an opportunity that you're going to get more chances, and maybe trade chances, all the opportunities that come up, as training camp goes along. Defensive tackle, nose tackle is one of the positions where it feels like you're going to still be able to get a good bang for your buck when you need to, if things kind of don't go right with your rookies.
The only problem with this strategy is they're relying on a lot of young guys, not only just the rookies, right?
Yeah.
But Justin Rogers and Mozzie. Like, Mozzie Smith is a 3rd-year player who has had a very up and down first 2 years of his career. They're really banking on him having, a big leap in year 3. We know that defensive tackle is one of the positions that it takes the longest for these guys to develop. So if they don't sign somebody, which I think they will, you could have a pretty rough defensive tackle room early in the season. Again, it's easy to find guys to come in and play 15, 20 snaps. But I think they're hoping they don't have to go do that, because the guys that are available for a reason. They're not giving you any juice as a pass rusher. They're not really giving you much athleticism to make plays either. But I don't mind this strategy. Like, they are clearly going to let these guys have a million reps once we get to Oxnard and once we get to training camp. And I don't hate it for it, because if they can find one of these guys, and maybe it's Toya, right? Like, if Toya can be a 15 to 20 snap guy that you stole in the 7th round, I mean, that's a home run. That's a great pick on day 3.
Yeah, and let's, we don't talk a ton about him very much, so let's take a second to talk about the Mozzie situation, right? Because I think that it's not just rose-colored glasses to hope that Mozzie takes a pretty big step forward this year, because this is really the first year that he's been healthy and had a full off season to kind of, fully get into the weight room and kind of get back up to the weight, closer to the weight that he was, or at least put on. I mean, like, really all he needs at this point is another 5 or 10 pounds of muscle from where he was at the end of last year. Right. And I think that, now just being healthy and kind of being away, it's just been sight unseen with him. And that's the issue with the whole situation. So for us, it's like a complete unknown with Mozzie Smith. The coaches have been monitoring it. They have a better idea here. So I think that it's interesting to kind of ponder exactly what sort of version of Mozzie Smith that you're going to get, and how the Cowboys are reacting to this. Are they drafting these guys because they are worried about how the offseason that Mozzie's had, or is the fact that they waited until the 7th round before they started filling the position mean that they're just filling roles for the future and they actually like where he is? So I think we talk a lot about some of the other aspects of this, and how's Rodgers going to come in after going off and being on the Bengals practice squad, and the Cowboys signing him to the end of the practice, to the end of the roster at the end of the year. Like, we talk about a lot of that stuff, but ultimately at the end of the day, a lot of the hopes and dreams at the position fall on how Mozzie Smith has developed over this offseason, and if he can really kind of turn around his career at this point.
Real quick note on Mozzie Smith. This is his 5th year in a row going back to Michigan where he's got a new defensive coordinator. He's not had the same defensive coordinator in back-to-back seasons since high school. So it's been quite the ride for young Mozzie Smith. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.